Hello, I'm going to be talking about some more of my schooling and what has happened since last I left off this series. I've continued to actively participate in the school system, building off of what happened and just going with it. And I have two stories to talk about. The first one is I stayed after class and talked to my political science teacher, and some interesting points came up that I wrote down. So, here are some terms that he gave me. I'm making a video. Here are some terms that he gave me that are relevant to the educational system as it works today. Higher Learning Commission, or the United States educational system. The North Central Accrediting Association, that's the NCAA. Quantifying student learning outcomes, that's an interesting one. The accountability movement. So, yes. So how did this develop with my history teacher? Well, let's see. I brought up how ineffective the educational experience is and has been, and he's like a fascinating person because he's like so integrated with this system that it's hard to even communicate with him. He has no idea what I'm saying sometimes. Like, just really interesting to see how definition and the textbook version of reality has shaped how he understands the world in such a way so that I mean, it's not like teaching, it's like the opposite of teaching. It's like, as the student, I have to teach him how to understand me. He's like crippled himself with this information. So he would relate everything that I brought up to these terms that I gave you about how the system works. And a really interesting connection that came up was I brought up how competitive it feels, how there's this constant pressure to win and to look good and to be the best, and that seems to be undermining the actual effect of education. And he said that this like competitiveness is a lot like how it works in the political strata. So this change that we're seeing in how the educational system is becoming more mechanical, quantifying student learning outcomes, that term says it all. Because we're seeing these changes, it's like reflective of how the political system works from the perspective of the two competing parties that we have in this country are like competing, and education is like a really effective platform to come forward from. So like this competition to win, which is like getting infused into the system, and it's like ridiculous because politicians aren't teachers or students. They shouldn't be in charge of how the school system works, so it's just absurd. He said that there may come a point in the future where I would have to take standardized testing to graduate college. We have, everyone has to take a certain test in the country to make certain that the schools are meeting the standards. So everyone has to take a certain test, like all high schools, everyone has to pass the Stanford 9 and the Ames tests to get through school. But this is like being done in such a way so that the students are given less and less room to actually be human beings as what human beings are in the world today. And they're more and more supposed to conform themselves to the idealized image, the idea of a student, and it's like just separating reality farther and farther away, with the belief that it's becoming better because we're more effectively able to train people to look like they know things, which is just absurd. So that's what came up with Mr. Erich, my political science teacher. And then yesterday I went to see the dean. I have that. Oh crap! All right. Hold on. When I went to see the academic advisor, he gave me a map of the hierarchy. So I went to see the dean. So the teachers are down here, and the teachers are all divided into their categories, like history or whatever. So the teachers are managed, each group of teachers is managed by a dean. So I went to see this dean, who is a good friend of Mr. Robert, the academic advisor that I talked about in the earlier video. And so I went to see the dean, and we talked about things, and he was like really impressed with me, and like, Jesus, what did we even say that whole hour? Like, all I remember literally is him just being like, oh, you sound like, an educated person, like, which is cool, but that's like not really the point. Yeah, we didn't really connect on any points about the system. This man is a good friend of Robert, the dean. Randy, the dean, he's a good friend of Robert, but Robert's understanding is a little bit more like concise. So I didn't really like learn anything. I mean, I guess there's a point that came up that's like important to identify, is that there's no way that I can resist the system. There's like no possible way. I'm going to have to find ways to operate in the system from the platform that I see the flaws, and I can, within the values that already exist in the system, propose to them a method that is better. And that's like the only way that I can communicate with the system, is to give it something better by its own standards. Oh, he also said, the dean said that I was not like in any kind of, he said he was from the 60s, so he called me a protester, and I was like, no, I don't want to be called a protester. So that was like the point where it's like I have to become functional with these terms so that I can talk to these people like exactly in their in their lingo and in their neighborhood. I can like walk in there and say exactly what is needed to get the change that is possible at this point happening. So at the end, he was like, oh, you sound like you're, the point came up like, oh, I'm not allowed to really express myself around the house, and my family is like not working, and blah blah blah. And so he directed me towards like, oh, you're not being allowed to express yourself. That's a problem. You should be able to express yourself. And he directed me towards this like magazine that the school produces, like all this art and poems and shit. And I mean, it's kind of bullshittery, but I'll put some stuff in there and see if I can can't get something cool into this thing. And also, he directed me towards the school paper, and I never thought about that, but I should go pursue writing for the school paper. Alright, oh, another interesting thing. there was like this point where he felt like intimidated by me, like intimidated, like almost like I've kind of felt like that a few times, probably more than I remember, but like a lot in my life where I felt like I'm being left behind and I want to help and be included. Yeah, kind of went through that, like fearing to be left out and to be obsolete and to be useless. And so that was like his motivation to really like, he was like really with me for a while, like really helping me, and like, but it was just motivated from that point of like insecurity and fear of being left out and not included and not special, not being special. That's like, yeah. Okay, so that is my experience with my political teacher talking about school and my experience with the dean, Randy. Okay, there will be more of these to come.